In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the crank position sensor on your Honda Accord. This will be located under the timing cover. Let's get started. There should be clips all down the front of this front bumper for this splash shield. Go down and remove all of the ones that are attached. We only have zip ties, so we're going to go around and cut all the zip ties to be able to drop the splash shield. Pull the splash shield out of this front and remove it. Using a 19mm socket, remove the 5 lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Using a jack, we're going to get under our oil pan right onto the corner and just put a little bit of pressure on there. Using a 15mm wrench, we're going to get on the tensioner pulley, take the tension off. We're going to pull the belt off of the generator. You can let the tension off the tensioner. We're going to fully remove this belt. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the ground strap off of the mount. Don't drop the bolt. Using a 14mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 bolts off the top of the mount. Before removing these top bolts, we're going to break the side bolt free using a 17mm. Get it loose. We'll take our top bolts out. Remove the bolt off the side. Remove the bolt and the mount. Remove the 12mm bolt on the bottom of the tensioner. Pull that bolt out. I'm going to use a 14mm wrench to remove the bottom bolt for the tensioner. This is going to be going through the second pulley. Pull straight up on the power steering reservoir. Pull it out of the bracket. We're going to pull this up to the side, out of our way. Fully loosen the bolt and remove the tensioner. Using a 12mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 bolts for the power steering pump. There's one under the pulley in the back. Remove the bolt. There's one more on the top left. Remove the bolt. Pull the power steering pump up and over. You can use a bungee cord and tie it up to keep it out of your way. On our crankshaft pulley, we're going to have 2 sets of marks. There's going to be a set right here. There should be 3 marks. If you keep going to the left, there should be a singular mark. We're going to mark this white. I'm going to use just a little white paint and mark it. We're going to bring that white mark all the way around, going clockwise until we hit the plastic arrow that is marked on the timing cover. On the other side of that engine mount, you're going to see that plastic arrow. We're going to turn this crankshaft pulley until we match up that white mark with that arrow. We're using a 19mm socket on the crankshaft pulley bolt. On these top timing covers, you're going to find this little rubber cap. We're going to pull that cap off. We're going to check our alignment of the cams. You can see inside of here there's going to be a little yellow line, and we want that to line up in this plastic embossment in the cover. Once we have these lined up, then we're ready to take our crank bolt out. This one can go just a little bit farther. You want all 3 timing marks to line up, so this front cam, we'll go check the rear cam, and then you want that bottom white mark on the crank pulley lined up with the arrow on the cover. This is the rear cam, you can see it's lined up. If these marks are not lined up, you're going to want to go 360 degrees on your crank pulley until you can find these marks on the cam. I'm going to use a 19mm socket on an impact and remove the crank pulley bolt. Once you take the crank pulley bolt out, double check your timing marks, be sure they're still all lined up, and then remove the crank pulley. We're going to wiggle this side to side until it pops off. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove all of the bolts for the top 2 covers. Remove all the bolts in the cover. Do the same thing on the back cover. Pull the wire harness out of the top of the cover, push it to the back, and remove the timing cover. You're going to use a 10mm socket to remove all of the bolts for the lower timing cover. There's one more on the bottom. Do the same thing on the other side of the cover. There's one more 10mm bolt right under this bracket. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 nuts for the bracket. Remove the nuts and the bracket. Remove the bolt for the crank sensor. Using a 10mm socket. Pull the crank sensor straight off. On this back side, the harness is tied into a stud. To remove the connector, push on the tab, pull straight up. Remove the sensor. Install the crank sensor. Push until you hear a click. If you don't hear a click, give it a pull. Make sure the connector is locked on. Install the harness over the studs and the sensor onto the stud. Get the bolt started for the crank sensor. Snug it down. Torque it to 8.7 foot-pounds. Install the metal bracket. Get both nuts started. Torque them to 8.7 foot-pounds. Install the cover down into place. Get the bolts started. Install the top covers. Get the bolts started. Do the same thing on the rear cover. Get it on, get the bolts started. With all 3 covers installed and all of the bolts installed, we're going to go around snugging them down. You just want to get them nice and snug. With all the cover bolts tight, we'll go down and start installing the crankshaft pulley. Install the crank plate. Be sure that the curve is facing towards you. Install the crankshaft dampener. Install the pulley bolt. While holding the crankshaft, we're going to torque the bolt to 47 foot-pounds. And then we're going to go 60 degrees. You can make a mark on the bolt. Once you've hit 60 degrees, you're good to go. Pull the power steering pump down. We're going to get the bolts started. Snug the bolts down. Torque the power steering pump bolts to 16 foot-pounds. Install the motor mount. Get the bolts started. Snug the bolts down. Torque the top bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Torque the front bolt to 47 foot-pounds. Install the ground strap and the bolt. Snug the bolt down and torque it to 8 foot-pounds. With our motor mount installed, we can remove the jack from the vehicle. Drop the tensioner down into place and get the bolt started. Get the bottom bolt started. Torque the top bolt to 33 foot-pounds. Torque the bottom bolt to 16 foot-pounds. Pull the belt back over. Be sure it's sitting on all of the pulleys correct. Use our 15mm wrench. Reinstall the belt. Install the power steering reservoir into the bracket. Go through and attach all of the clips for the splash shield. We're going to re-zip tie ours back up. We'll go through and put a few more on here. Install the wheel. Get the lug nut started. Snug the nuts down. Torque the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.